You rolling? Hi, I'm Timothy Mitchell, the Practical Printer, and welcome to my print lab.
Hi everyone, my name is Timothy Mitchell and I am the Practical Printer. Digital printing for practical people. I think today's world, it seems to be more like practical people for digital printing, or
Yep.
digital people for practical printing.
Practical people.
People are definitely turning into digital versus analog. I have a guest here who I believe is one of the most knowledgeable guys on DTF printing. Direct to film is huge. It's taking off. It has been taking off. The trajectory is going to continue. People who are good at it are going to make money, and people who are not going to make money. Making a high quality product with DTF requires a workflow and a knowledge of that workflow. And I think my guest, Ian Aram, is one of the smartest guys on workflow, but he also has solutions. And he has a very important solution to what I believe is one of the central pain points. I can give you all kinds of personal examples of this with real world empirical cases where people have bought DTF printers. The shaker wasn't what they wanted and it was malfunctioning. And then ultimately it caused the printer not to operate. The inks didn't get shaken as instructed all the time because there weren't clear instructions. And then you ended up with a dead shaker and a printer with clogged heads. So now you have your whole workflow is done. And there were a whole bunch of people around the country that went through this. It was avoidable, but it's a new technology and a whole bunch of people raced to market to try to make as much money as they could. Technology has changed. The industry ink manufacturers have responded. And the biggest issue that I've always felt that DTF failed at, other than crappy shakers, was white ink. The white ink simply fell out of suspension, even if it was using circulation process. And if you didn't shake it regularly or you went on vacation or something like that, you came back to how come half my white nozzles are toast? And why do I have to spend the next, 6 to 8 hours printing like crazy? Oh, now I'm out of the white ink. I need another bottle because it failed.
And the worst part about the whole situation is, had I not been, had I have the same white ink issues with, pigment falling out, I would have never met you, Timothy, because how would I be at all these trade shows? Leaving the printer stagnant for 7 days wouldn't be possible. So
I know. Right. So Ian came up with a way, and he has been at the cutting edge of white ink development. And a while back, he had a very high quality white ink. And recently, I think he's introduced a wrinkle into the system that I will never use the word game changer because we've agreed to retire that word into a hole. But it has changed the way people can print if they're smart. And you can use this ink in any printer. Please do not believe that you have to use the OEM inks because you have an OEM printer. You're welcome to do that for the first year if it makes you happy that you're staying under warranty. But the truth is, I'll just ask you bluntly, Ian, are your inks, your white inks, superior to the other white inks on the market? And if so, why?
I'm biased, of course, but yes, I believe they are. And the reason why is because for a long time, what I focused on in finding the perfect DTF ink formula, I focused on opacity and hand feel. I felt those were the two main things in DTF ink that were needed to be solved. Those were solved quite some time ago. And most recently, the development that we've made to our latest white DTF ink is using a new binder technology that allows for zero titanium pigment fallout. Meaning, when you're running DTF, you have your CMYK inks. They never need to be shaken. They never need to be recirculated. They just run flawlessly all the time. They never clog, right? If you were just printing CMYK, can you imagine how painless DTF would be?
Yep. I was there in the early days of UV, and the CMYK ran beautifully, and the white ink clogged like crazy. Yeah. And I hate it, and I cursed the day I ran into white ink. And I thought, if we just sold these printers without ink, they'd be flawless.
Yeah. And so the reason that causes that is to get the white ink to be as bright and opaque as we need it to be for DTF printing previously, we need to use titanium oxide as a pigment. Titanium oxide is basically a micro metal that's suspended into DTF ink So when that ink is sitting stagnant and it's not being recirculated or shaken, these teeny little metal particles essentially are falling out of solution to the bottom of the ink. And that's what's clogging your head. So when you're running a DTF printer and your white channels are always falling out and your nozzles are always clogging and your CMYK never has any issues, that's because the CMYK doesn't have pigment fallout. And our new white DTF ink mimics our CMYK colors. So it has no titanium oxide in it. It uses a new binder that allows for zero pigment fallout, meaning you can take that bottle of ink and set it on a shelf for a year, come back later, pick it up, turn it upside down, and it's fully fluid liquid. There is no particle fallout. There's nothing to shake back into solution. Our white ink doesn't require your recirculation system to be on. And, I keep mine on low because I think, continuity is important, and it doesn't really matter if there's no titanium falling out. Why would you not want everything mixed really well? But we have essentially as 85% plus reduced rate of nozzle clogging from our previous white ink to the formula that we're running now. And I'd say that's huge for the fact that there's maybe a 10-15% variance between the difficulty of your CMYK inks and your white ink now. Whereas previously it was a whole deal. It was our white inks clogged 10-20 times as much.
White ink was your huge obstacle in DTF printing. It was a mess. Yeah. I hated it.
And with that the new binder technology solving the most pervasive issue in DTF printing is hugely important. But
okay, so let me ask you one other thing then, a follow-up. How's the hand and how's the opacity?
And that's exactly what I was going to say. And so in the process of this, I was scared to shit that we're going to have to cut some freaking corners here and balance the scales a bit, because what are the chances that we can make a white DTF ink that has zero pigment fallout? And let me preface this.
Yeah. Everything in the business is trade-offs, right? You get one thing to work and then other things don't work as well.
Yes. And I do want to preface this because we are saying it. I do not manufacture the ink. I have a custom manufacturer. And the reason that we have our ink manufactured is because with the old titanium pigment that's in inks, we figured to fix that, we'd have to get screwed on opacity and hand feel and all these different things. So I thought, well, we're going to have to weigh one for the other. As it turns out, we have figured it out with zero loss in opacity. In fact, since our previous formula, we've actually boosted opacity over time since then. And the hand feel, I have yet to be more satisfied with. So it seems that this new binder doesn't affect either of those two. When manufactured right, a DTF ink, white ink, can be made that's the best feeling ink, the brightest ink, and has no printhead clogging issues. Now, it's not unbelievably inexpensive. Our inks run about $74 a liter. Now, you can't say that's expensive because look at all the other companies.
No, it's still less than OEM, and it's about on par with what DuPont is
significantly less than OEM. Whether we're talking Milwaukee at 138 a liter, or Brother at over 200, Epson at over...
Yeah, Brother's in crazy land right now.
Yeah, so our ink pricing compared to OEMs is like half or a third and sometimes a quarter the cost on some of these newer OEM printers that I think is crazy. But which, by the way, none of these inks that we're talking at this price have this new binder. So there's that as well. But when you're also talking, we could go out there and just buy these crappy, Chinese inks for 30 a liter. Our ink is, compared to the cheapest ink on the market and the crappiest ink on the market, our ink is twice the cost. But there's a couple aspects that I would like to quickly go over, because everybody who contacts me, who talks to me about DTF, no matter how smart they are and how educated they are, they have the same concern, which is ink cost. And let me explain something to you, my friends. Your ink cost on the most...
Hold on, everyone. Stop, Ian. Everybody pay attention. This part is really important. Ian, please go ahead.
It's very important.
Ian's going to explain a value proposition that's very important for you to get. He's explained this to me in the past, and I agree with it 100%. Go ahead.
So everybody comes to me and talks to me about quality and about what DTF is capable of, and get samples of our products, and they always bring up the same thing, which is what our ink costs compared to the crappy ink that they're running now. And I can only explain it to them in one way, which is it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what the ink costs, right? Because
There we go.
if all your heavy costs in DTF are your location overhead, right? All the
Yep.
normal business things that you're running, of course, marketing, all that
Yep.
kind of stuff. Your operational labor of the employee.
Yep. Labors too, usually.
So factor in ink
Cost of the equipment.
Yeah, and so the latest calculation I did, what was it, a DTF Expo, the presentation I gave, I did a full calculation on what it costs per square inch to print DTF with everything included, operational labor, overhead, the whole thing, right? And then we did what it costs when you're running the lowest grade ink and when you're running the highest grade ink. And people think, well, the ink's twice as much. My costs are going to be... Your costs are 0.0003. Just write that down. Dollars per square inch. So unbelievable.
To be fixated on your ink cost is simply a colossal business miscalculation. That if you're doing it, if you do not know your costs, most people don't. They never do any of the math you just said. And as a result, they don't realize that whether the ink is $70 or $40 is completely meaningless to their bottom line.
Yes. So if the inks were identical in quality and all these other things, I would still think it's kind of laughable to talk about how 1/10 of 3 cents is going to impact your bottom. I mean, if you're a profitable company, you're running right, that should have almost no effect. But then let's consider, hey, you're running much higher gradings. They're not the same. They're actually, you're now running what I consider to be the highest grade ink on the market that allows you to do two very important things. And these are the propositions that you actually earn your profit on. Not saving money on your ink cost. The way that you are more profitable is by producing a higher grade product and hitting higher end clientele. And when you do that, your margins, you just tripled your margins right off the bat. I mean, what is the ink cost?
Because what's the biggest knock against DTF from people who want quality? The two big knocks are it's inferior to both screen printing and DTG, and so therefore I don't want it because it has this hard turtle-like feel to it, and I don't like the hand. Is that fair?
Yeah. So if you can produce a product that meets, and I mean, for instance, okay, so look at this shirt. This is halftone printed. This is DTF. I don't know if you could see the halftones in this. They're unbelievably small. We can now get halftones that surpass DTG. So our quality, when you're running high-grade inks that are unbelievably soft and unbelievably vibrant, and you know how to manipulate your artwork properly, and you know how to target high-end clientele with a proper ink and product, that when that customer orders something from you, they're going to come back to you. Because if they don't, the reason why is they're going to go to somebody else. And when they order that person's product, they're going to realize the vast difference between the two. And you can make a plenty good margin just matching their prices. Even if you weren't higher priced, you still make fine margins, but you can now hit that higher margin clientele. You can hand people DTF printed apparel without telling them it's DTF, and they will presume it's DTG or screen. And we're actually doing quite further past that. We're now getting to the point where people wonder what it is because it's obviously not DTG, but they're just shocked with how it's in some cases better. Now, it depends on what fabrics you're printing on, your process and all that,
right?
Your consumables, but that's all there. I want to move on to the third most important thing, and that is downtime. Downtime, my friends, is crazy. So when you're running an ink that is clogging all the time, you can have 1 day of downtime out of 6 months, and that will pay for all your inks. All the difference in your ink cost, just a single day of not printing, right? So that 1 day you got to replace your print head, or that 1 day, your dampers clog because you're running shitty inks, and and you have all this titanium backed up in it, those hours of downtime that are accumulated every month, when we're talking, remember, $0.0003 per
Right.
square inch for your ink cost.
Okay. Also,
It's
what
crazy.
do you do when you come back? Okay, so you go on vacation, you have your you know, superior white inks. I go on vacation and I'm using, you know, even OEM inks where they're trying to use a circulation system which isn't necessarily circulating through the whole system, all cases. Maybe we can get into that at some point. But I'm going to come back, and because these inks have not been shaken, which the OEM, a lot of cases, tells you to do that, they do tell you every day, every other day, you should take the inks out and shake them. When you come back and you're missing nozzles, you may be able to get the print head back up again. How much ink are you going to waste to do that? How many
Yeah.
print and purge jobs are you going to do to get that print head back? And how much is that ink and how much of it? So what, I'm going to waste like a quarter of the ink in my container just to get the nozzles back? And what does that cost? And how often do I need to do that?
Well, and don't
And what
ask
is my time? Like, do I want to value my time and my labor? So if I spend 3 hours goofing around with this to get them back, well, what do I charge for that? And a lot of people go, oh, I don't calculate my own time. I'm like, if you're a business owner and you're not calculating your own time, you're cheating yourself.
Yeah. That's a great question. And to be honest now, I'm not even the best person to answer that because I go out of town to a trade show for 7 days and I come back and my maintenance process before the next print day includes 15 minutes of what I basically do is I use which we have our own cleaning solution that's DTF specific. Basically, it's a 2-perolidone based printhead cleaning solution. Put that on, little microfiber pad, wipe the face of the printhead, clean the capping station, clean the wiper blade, and then I run one printhead cleaning cycle on its lowest function, print a nozzle check, it's perfect, and then we start printing. At the end of the day, I clean up those areas and turn off the printer, and I leave it completely unplugged and off all night. There's almost no wasted time and ink in the maintenance. Just imagine if your CMYK was all the colors you printed, how little your maintenance would be. That's pretty much the closest you can imagine. That's what we're experiencing right now.
Okay. I'm assuming you have a lot of customers already for this ink. I mean, I've known 3 or 4 people that are using it and have spoken very highly about it.
I have plenty of customers, and what I really appreciate about that is that we have been entirely organic and word of mouth until this point. We have zero marketing budget, zero into ads. We're actually going to start this week to start targeting Mimaki TXF users because they're experiencing a lot of issues right now. And
I can neither confirm nor
I can.
Yeah, you can.
Yeah.
I can neither confirm nor deny. I don't know.
And we have an ink that, all this time we're talking about inks, and that's great. And when we're talking about DTF and we're talking about inks, people presume, okay, they're talking about bottles of ink. They're talking about 24-inch film. That doesn't apply to me. I run a Mimaki, for instance. I run 32-inch film and my ink's in ink bags. So really, who cares what you guys are talking about? Well, our ink is available in Mimaki TXF ink bags with OEM matched chips that last 2 years. So, you don't have to worry about Mimaki's planned obsolescence insanity project out of Japan where they decide to program chips internationally. And by the time you get them, you have 3 months to run the ink before it's expired and it goes into the landfill. So, we have a Mimaki ink for the TXF printers. We have a 32-inch film as well as 62-inch for their new wide format printer. Our ink bags do not need to be shaken. They don't clog heads.
And if you can find somebody that bought that wide format printer, then yeah, you can get that film.
Yeah, exactly. And
I'm sorry, I couldn't help myself.
Yeah, the day Mimaki sells their first 62-inch printer, call me because I got the film.
You're the only person that has film in that size.
Who's crazy?
And thank God, they're going to keep dragging it to the trade show, and you're going to be the one supplier for it.
Yeah, maybe.
Whatever.
But the idea to it is, and we're doing the same thing with with Roland, and I have nothing against these companies. I love them. They inspired me to be who I am today. But what do they expect? Somebody's not going to do anything about it? I mean, their ink costs are crazy, and their ink quality is trash. I mean, they could have hired me a long time ago. They chose
Well,
not
that
to.
was one of the things that you said to me that was so shocking is I wouldn't, because, if we make the argument, which we've already applied, that the cost of your ink, other than Brother, who's like on another planet altogether, the cost of the ink of all the OEMs is within certain, because they all check each other's ink price, right? They all know per liter they're within a certain tolerance. And then they know where all of the third-party inks, certainly the big ones like DuPont, sit. So they know where they are. And it's not the make or break on the thing. But what bothers me is, hey, man, you want to charge a premium price? How about for a premium product? And I trust your judgment that their product is not all that.
I mean, they could put our $75 a liter ink in their bag and sell it for $150 a liter, which is crazy, right? But at least they would be selling a product that people are going, I haven't tried anything better than this. This is great.
Right.
We don't deal with issues. But when the ink that they're selling is trash and they're selling it for absurd amounts just because nobody really has had, I don't even know what term to use, but nobody's really gone out of their way to fix OEM solutions because they don't want to, mess with Mamaki and with, all these other companies, Brother, Roland, and I have great relationships with all the guys at their companies. If any of the heads of them have an issue, they've had years to acknowledge that and to contact me and say, hey, we want to work with you instead of against you. And none of them have. So really at this point, what I'm focused on is the customer, the person who's paying $150 a liter for their Mamaki inks and is forced into doing.
For me, it's not the payment. There's a whole bunch of people with a whole bunch of printers that are either DOA or nearly DOA or cost a ton of money because when the shaker went down, because more often than not, the shaker was the whole first and second generation of shakers was largely trash, in my opinion. They were just a product waiting to die. None of the print manufacturers sold them, so they were all done through the dealer, and most of the dealers just hastily patched something together from China and then, attached them to the printer and crossed their fingers. I know where most of them are all made. Several of my friends in the manufacturing business, so the AFAR shaker is kind of notorious everywhere. And, the Japanese manufacturers didn't want to make their own shakers and integrate their workflow, so the customer had to use these crappy shakers. Shaker dies, now what? Well, the mediocre white ink that will sort of work with a circulation system and a lot of attention and regular maintenance is now sitting idle. It's idle because the shaker's not working. So now the printer's not printing. Well, if the printer's not printing, it's definitely going to clog. And so now you have a DOA printer. If they had your superior sediment-free white inks, maybe their printers would be fine. I mean, there's a very good chance that a little downtime would have made that much difference.
Yep, that's true.
I don't think that's an unreasonable proposition. So to my way of thinking, if you have a superior ink that eliminates downtime and the likelihood of the print heads getting clogged, then I think you're doing the customer a big favor.
I'm doing Mamaki a big favor. Let's be real here, because Mamaki's costs are on maintenance. The reason they can't manage their DTF printer line in a way where their customers are happy is because when a customer
the dealer sold so many of them, there's no way that Mamaki could possibly service them all. So and they're on the hook for the brand Mamaki, and they got to fix them all, and they have a giant chorus of people who are pissed off. That fair?
Yeah. So what does it matter, right? If it takes 3 weeks to get a tech in there to replace your head, when the head doesn't need to be replaced in the first place, just run the right inks. They don't want to solve problems is the idea. Call me if you do, my friends, because we can do it. But it's how many years have I been I've been programming a DS ink chips to bypass OEMs locking in customers to absurd ink costs for like 8 years now. I mean, this isn't something new to them. No, they created this issue and they've been running with it for as long as possible. It's going to take somebody to disrupt that before they realize, hey, we need to focus on product quality, not product price. And because the price is irrelevant, right? It
would seem to me, Ian, that what happened is everyone wanted to race into DTF as quickly as possible. Okay, and Roland and Mamaki were in a race to put a DTF printer on the market from a Japanese manufacturer as quickly as they could. Because they know the market was huge, and it was
And
all going to the Chinese it was all going to other manufacturers. And if they did, Epson took forever to get in the game, but they're now finally in the game, and we'll have a separate show
yeah,
about
well,
what
what
you
they
think of
did,
the Epson printer.
there's no problem with that though. Okay, so look at Mamaki's case, right? Mamaki, one of the highest quality printer manufacturers, OEMs, that sells into America. They, for a long time, in dye sub and UV, I mean, they're printers, the equipment itself, the printer, not the inks, all the other stuff, but the printer. It's great. Now, I disagree with the way they're built. I think we talked about this in the previous episode, so we're not going to get into it, but I think it's crazy how they build planned obsolescence and make their printers difficult to maintenance. But the idea to it is it wasn't stupid of Mamaki to get into DTF so quick. It was actually a brilliant idea because they have the printer bases, right? To modify their current printers to make them DTF. I mean, what is, in theory, a DTF printer, right? It's just a standard Mamaki roll-to-roll printer with the right Epson heads in it, a heat platen, a vacuum platen. I mean, that's like really it. So it wasn't crazy of them to jump in to create a DTF printer so quick. What was crazy of them is to not put the effort and time and knowledge into understanding what inks they need to white label as Mamaki inks and sell with that printer. And they never came out with a film. They never came out with a shaker, right? So they're selling a partial.
None of them want to touch the powder.
That too, yeah. So they're selling a partial product, right? They're saying, here's our printer.
They're selling 1/4 of the actual product.
Yes, but the
maybe a
problem
third
is that they're locking. So okay, you buy Mamaki's printer, well, you have to run Mamaki inks. Well, they don't know what the frick they're doing with DTF inks. I mean, they don't have a.
But couldn't you make the same argument with dye sublimation? You have a company like Mamaki makes a dye sub printer. Here's the printer, here's the ink. They don't sell the paper. They don't sell the calendar press. All those things are necessary for your dye sub workflow. Mamaki goes, hey, we sell the printer, we sell the ink, but you guys figure out the paper.
Dye sub inks are certified, right? They're not having issues with them. People love them. People aren't complaining about the costs and the quality.
True,
now,
their dye sub inks are quite good.
People who don't run OEM. But for the vast majority of dye sub, there's nothing wrong with Mamaki's printer and ink.
Okay. Well, since we're on the subject, I'm not very big on either Rasterlink or the profiles either.
Yeah, and I'm not exactly. And so that's what I'm saying. I agree with you 100%.
If you look at built an ideal workflow, which is rip, excellent profiles, dialed into your film, dialed into your powder, with your ink on your printer, with a good quality shaker and a good heat press like the one you have behind you, you're going to get extraordinarily high quality results versus these other alternatives where at each point in the workflow I'm describing, you have a flaw or an inconsistency or you have lower quality than you should. You have two totally different products at the end of the road of both things I described. Yep. One is very competitive, if not superior in some respects to DTG and screen, and the other one, all the screen and DTG people can still crow and go, dude, that does not meet expectations. That's not a quality product.
And in a way, that's also been very helpful to my company because there's a ton of people out there just reminding all the people who are doing dye sub and screen and DTG, hey, look how trash our DTF prints are. This is nothing you guys got to worry about. And the quality comparison is laughable. Meanwhile, we've been focused on perfecting DTF, and there's no limitations in the technology, right? When you're producing a crap DTF product, it's one of these three things: ink, film, powder, your RIP software, and ICC profiling. And so it's not DTF that sucks. It's your consumables that suck. It's your ICC profiles that suck. It's your heat press that sucks. Your heat press, your inks, your film, your powder, and your ICC profiling controls 100% of your quality, your stretchability, your lack of cracking, your vibrancy, how thick your prints are, what they feel like. And so DTF technology is only limited by the consumables that you're running, not by how the technology works, because you can surpass screen printing with DTF if you know what you're doing. And I do it all the time, no questions. I will show up with something and hand it to a huge screen company and them, this is DTF? You're crazy. They don't believe me. And so it's not the technology, it's what people, it's like when people, you can go out and buy a car, right? If you're just gonna change the oil every 10,000 miles with crappy oil, like it's gonna suck. I mean, you're gonna have issues. It's gonna be a high cost, low quality experience. But if you know what you're doing, it's not the car that you're running. It's the shitty engine that you have in it. You know, replace it. You can turn. Doesn't matter if you have a shitty Chinese printer, one of the best Chinese printers that's ever been made, a Milwaukee, a Rolla. It doesn't matter. You can run the right inks, film, powder, and profiles on that printer. So it's kind of irrelevant. These OEMs suck because they force people into, they encrypt chips and they build plans of obsolescence into their product. But at the end of the day, it's not their printer controlling the quality. It's the inks you put in it, the film, your software you're running. Sure. You know, so I think a DTF is really limited mostly by the humans that are using it and not by what it's capable of, you know? And I think that's big, especially to the shops who all their customers come to them and they don't go, hey, we need 100 pieces DTF printed, or we need 100 pieces screen. But they come to them and they say, here's our design, here's our mock-ups, we need 100 pieces. We want the highest quality. We want to give us options for the best quality shirts, whatever it is. They really don't, they're not asking for certain print technologies. They're asking for certain qualities in the printing that they want, you know, that stand up to their brand and certain things like that. So oftentimes they don't know how their merch is printed. You know, they don't
care. They just have a quality standard, and a lot of that quality standard was established through screen and DTF.
Yeah,
DTG, direct to garment.
Name for it out there, and it has a bad name, and not because of what it is, but because of what it was for the first year, was trash. No matter who was doing it, nobody had figured it out. So DTF.
Yeah, I've seen a ton of absolute trash DTF. And I've had close friends of mine who work for large companies who've ordered, like, hey, they have a big event for the company, a big trade show. So they order a whole bunch of shirts, and she shows it to me. And I said, this is just low quality DTF trash. Mm-hmm. Whoever's making this has no idea what they're doing.
Yeah.
And they got into business because, hey, you know, we can. But I said, you need to send all that back. You need to tell them to eat it.
And then
I wouldn't pay them.
That attributes that with DTF, right?
Correct.
And so they're attributing the quality to the technology when really they should be attributing the quality to the print shop, right? Because that's not DTF. That's not what's capable with DTF. That's what that print shop is using DTF to do. And so it's just built a really bad name for itself, which I think has been great, to be honest, because it's allowed me to focus on not proving people wrong, but just when everybody goes, oh, I've seen that, I've driven that car sucks. They're not going to drive it again, right? So they get a bad impression of DTF and they go, no, we're sticking with DTG, you know, and the next printer that they buy is, you know, another commercial, you know, Brother GTX, and that's great. That produces great quality. But what it's allowed us to do is to keep our heads down and focus on what we can accomplish within DTF instead of trying to market something that isn't true, you know, trying to sell people on something that just isn't there yet. You know, when you keep
it's almost like you're going to come back into the market after the market was polluted, after the market had a bunch of posers and clowns, and step into the market and say, here's the finished workflow. Here's how it's supposed to work. Here's all the steps. Here's the film. Here's the powder. Here's the profiles. Here's the ink. Here's the printers. And this is what we can build. And you're like a chrysalis, you know, you're like there's a rebirth to it because it was written off or it was considered by certain people as non-functional. And in fact, it wasn't at all.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. I'm going to wrap this up because we have to.
One last thing.
Okay. One more thing. You got it. Last word is yours, Ian.
All the biggest people in DTF printing as today's date came from screen, came from DTG, and they're running full-fledged print shops with all these technologies within them, and they're utilizing DTF for specific purposes. They're not pro-DTF, anti-DTF, oh, I don't like DTG. This is what all the idiots on the forums talk about, right? Is they discuss print technologies and which is better. But the people who are winning are using all of them, and they know the capabilities, and they're using the right one for the right project.
Got it. Yeah, I've heard the same thing from other people like Aaron Blank and others who said, yeah, it's screen, DTG, and DTF all together. And people
Yeah.
who are good at it just figure out here's a job, here's a quantity, here's a file. Where does this belong? That's a
Yep.
screen job. There's a file, here's a quantity, here's a request, DTG. And they just put it where it belongs and they're utilizing all three. Your position is make the best DTF workflow you can. I'm going to have the last word because there's something that drives me crazy. Do you know how many people I've heard who are so stubborn and so arrogant that they've built the perfect workflow? And I look at it and I go, no, you haven't. And they won't listen. And I just think, I already have a pretty good idea of what you're using, and you got sold a marketing slogan, and it's not true. Why don't you use your eyes in your head, in your hands, and then look at some alternatives and tell me honestly if you still have the best workflow? All workflows are improvable. All technology points are going to get better. Powder is going to get better. Ink is going to get better. Profiles will get better. Film will get better. You know what I mean? Like there's always going to be a constant refinement. To say like I have the perfect formula, you have a formula. But stay open-minded to the fact that you could make improvements. But I found so many people in this industry that just, no, we have the best system. And I'm like, yeah, your shaker is made from the same place as all this other stuff. It's not a great shaker. I don't know what you think, but you can't, they just don't listen. For whatever reason, they're fixed. And I think you're offering some genuine improvements in people's workflow. And the difference that I find working with you versus other people is you're empirical. You're like, here, let me show you. I'll prove it. I'll show you them side by side. I'll show you the process. Let's demystify this and let's look at what actually works. Let's run 3 different kinds of media. Let's run my profiles versus yours. We'll run on the same film, and I think you'll see that my products are superior. And my inks, my white ink jet's a lot better. My white ink doesn't clog. Does yours? You know what I mean? I mean, I'm sure you've encountered that kind of stubbornness in the industry.
And
And in such an immature industry, I don't understand the stubbornness because there's going to continue to be a whole bunch of good developments.
Yeah, and oftentimes I just will hand people a product and let it speak for itself, because it really doesn't matter what I say, because like, yes, I know that this is my passion and this is what I do, not because of money, because of this is, you know, if I just had a crazy trust fund, like I would be doing the same thing, right? This is what I do. It's not about money. So oftentimes, like, instead of just trying to sell somebody on a product because I see their workflow and their product, and it's like instinctively I just want to be like, show them you could upgrade to this, but it's my product, right? So I sound biased. I just sound like I'm selling. So very often what I'll do is I'll just hand somebody a shirt and just walk away, because that's really all that matters, right? Is what the customer sees and feels, and holding it in their hands, the quality that they interpret is really all that matters. It doesn't really matter what anybody else says that your product's going to do. If you could just hand them a product that they go, wow, I really actually haven't felt anything like this, I think that is, so much more important than trying to correct them.
Right. Well, it's the old Missouri approach. Show me.
Yeah.
Show me. Ian, this has been a pleasure. As always, we're probably going to run a little long, but I think the DTF market requires a lot of smart people to discuss it. I've obviously am learning, but I feel like finding and speaking to guys like you is a big help. And I would encourage everyone, reach out to Ian. I will put the contact information for him in the appropriate places. Please feel free to subscribe to my wonderful Practical Printer channel so that I can continue to keep doing this, and maybe one day YouTube will kick me out a pittance so that I can feed my 4 family.
And why don't you let me end this episode, since you gave me such a good introduction here.
All right.
Tim, one of the best people in the world, brilliant mind in not just inkjet, but in the industry, where he has the ability to acknowledge certain people that are really good at what they do and pull them together. And I think this, you going out of your way to create a podcast like this, and a lot of the other projects you've worked on, where you pick very specific people and you try to pull them to a team, I think that's greatly beneficial to the industry. and, just whether it's education or, teamwork or whatever it is. So I highly suggest that you watch all of Timothy's episodes going forward. Um, really, I highly support him. I really like what you're doing. I think it's great for the industry, and it's not commercialized. We're trying to feed Timothy's family here, but the
Right.
point
If
is,
I can find a way to commercialize it, I will, Ian. I
yeah,
just haven't figured out a business
it's
model
not
yet.
commercialized yet, right? So get in with Timothy now while before he's too cool, and yeah, support the project because I think it's great.
Great. Thank you very much, Ian. Bye, everybody. Tune into our next show. We will talk about more DTF related topics, including hardware finishing, probably a big segment on heat presses, timing, different dwell times, different peel technologies, different powders, safety precautions, all that stuff. So we're going to continue to deep dive into DTF because I think it's necessary, and it's a viable technology. It's going to change and continue to become more and more formidable. And it's going to be an important tool going forward for decorative apparel. Take care, everybody. Have a great weekend.